For years, gamers have been at war, debating, arguing, and claiming they know which one of these consoles were superior. Xbox or PlayStation, a battle known well to the hearts of all true gamers. And well, I can tell you after doing some digging and personal experiences, I can tell you that I have the answers to all the older generations, and a theory to what the answer is for the next generation of consoles. But for this video, we will be looking into the earliest versions of the console wars, and choosing a winner based on what we know and what we learned. Make your choices down in the comments below, and let's get into it. Our first contenders will be the original Xbox versus the PlayStation 2. Starting out, we have the very first Xbox. Released on November 15th, 2001, this console was released to the world, making its starting mark into the gaming industry, and creating some of the most beloved games for its time. Fable, an RPG game set into the fictional land of Abion. The series emphasizes on players' choices, a morality system, and a fairy tale-inspired take on British folklore. Then we got Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, the first role-playing video game set into the Star Wars universe. And lastly, it gave us one of the most important video game releases ever, one that would define Xbox's future. This is the first-person shooter, Halo: Combat Evolved, a game that would later get another release called Halo 2 and would help also define Xbox's live gaming service. Now moving back over to the Xbox itself, it had a few defining things that made its choice for certain gamers. Start this off, it had a built-in hard drive, which was kind of unusual at the time because back then games were saved inside the game itself or to a small memory card. It was also the first Xbox to introduce us to Xbox Live Gaming, which helped with the release of Halo 2 and its online multiplayer capabilities. It was also so beloved, in fact, that modders to this day made a mod to boot it back up online. Yes, you can look that up and actually find those mods. And lastly, since the Xbox came out a year later after the PlayStation 2, it made the graphics and the process at the time better than the PlayStation 2, especially with its load times. I'm more talking about GTA here. Now enough of Xbox, let's shift over to the Sony's PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2, a console that kept games releasing years after its time. Released on March 4th, 2000, this was Sony's second console ever, and to be honest, probably their best console ever. It introduced us to the biggest library a console had ever seen, while introducing some of the most beloved franchises that are still going years later. Let's go through some of these games. God of War, a Spartan soldier Kratos, is tasked by Athena to find Pandora's box, the key to defeating Ares. Ratchet & Clank, single-player, third-person shooter about a Lombax flying from planet to planet attempting to stop evil. Kingdom Hearts, a single-player RPG game made by Square Enix and Disney that was about a kid who travels to many Disney worlds with Donald and Goofy to stop the Heartless invasion by sealing each world's keyhole and restoring the peace to the realm. Lastly, Final Fantasy X, a single-player, story-heavy, turn-based RPG that involves a star blitzball player who groups up with others to stop a creature named Sin, and honestly had one of the most iconic laughs of the generation. Now that was only a small list of what PlayStation 2 offered in its massive 4,000 plus game library. Other things this console gave was the inclusion of a DVD playback feature. So instead of buying a DVD player and a gaming console and consistently switching the ports, it was a simple 2-in-1 package. It was also the first and last time that we saw a PlayStation console have backwards compatibility. And yes, I know the PlayStation 3 had it for a short time, but that was for its very early versions that most people didn't own. So I don't really count that. Next, I slightly mentioned it already, but it had switchable memory cards. This was actually kind of a good thing since you could take your save anywhere you wanted, sleepovers as a kid, or keeping it from being erased from others in the house. Now, lastly, the PlayStation 2 did have online capabilities, but it was mainly for Final Fantasy XI. and that was a online subscription-based MMO. Think of World of Warcraft, but Final Fantasy. But other than that, it wasn't really used as much. Now let's get to the final verdict. What was better for that era, Xbox or PlayStation 2? Xbox Pros had better online, had a slightly better performance, had a few amazing games that continued for generations. Then we got the PlayStation 2's Pros, with the only backwards compatibility console, had switchable memory cards, the biggest library of games for its time, huge handful of amazing games, and a built-in DVD player. Now it's pretty obvious on what the answer is going to be, but before you go into the comments being upset about the answer, I want you to keep these thoughts in your head. In the early 2000s, online gaming wasn't really a huge thing. It was more about couch co-op and the single-player games. And for couch co-op gaming, Nintendo held that title. Also, this was Xbox's first console ever, and it was still impressive for what they managed to achieve and what they did after. And I also want to quickly note, I didn't want to rate how the home screen and how the controllers were because everything is also partly of a personal preference. But with that out the way, the console that was better for this generation was the PlayStation 2. Did you guess that right? Well, if so, let me know in the comments below, and if I missed any details on any of the consoles, do let me know in the comments below with the source, because I love learning about the classic gaming. Last video, we talked about the beginning of the console wars between the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox, and the result turned out pretty interesting. But in this episode, we will be digging into the true original spark of the console wars, the one where people truly debated online to which one was superior. This would be the introduction to the PlayStation 3 versus the Xbox 360. Now, before we go into the details on both of these consoles, let me know in the comments below on what you think should win and why. Other than that, let's get debating. Starting out, we have the machine that had the very scary red color, but was also the last console to give us something really personal, something that no other console really did. That's right, gamers, today we are starting with the highly talked about Xbox 360, a console that fully shut down in the year 2024. Released on November 22nd, 2005, this would be Xbox's second console in the gaming world. This version of the Xbox would feature a sleek new design, wireless controllers, an amazing dashboard, and much, much more. They would also introduce us to some of the most memorable and still highly talked about games that were exclusive to the machine. Left 4 Dead 4, a game developed by Valve Corporation, yes, the one that made Steam on PC. This game focused on a 4-player cooperative zombies aspect. Left 4 Dead had a dynamic that changed enemy spawns and item locations for endless replayability. This game started on the Xbox and made Left 4 Dead 2 a year later, selling more than 12 million units combined by October 2012. This is not including the PC version. Next on the list we have Gears of War. Released in November 2006, it helped popularize the cover-based shooter genre, and was one of the first games to heavily showcase Xbox's 360's graphical power. This game introduced the iconic Lancer rifle, an assault rifle with a chainsaw attached. This was one of Xbox 360's most important exclusives during its early years. They ended up making the second game 2 years later and sold 2 million copies within the very first month. Then we got Halo 3, the next game to the main franchises of Xbox's life. Halo 3 was released on September 25th, 2007, and it sold over $170 million worth of copies in its first 24 hours. Halo 3 also introduced the Forge map editor, allowing players to create and customize game modes and Halo maps. Now, even though Xbox had an amazing lineup of games exclusive to that console, its personal experience to the console really sold itself to the average gamer. Starting this off, the Xbox 360's initial price sold at a mere $300, or you can spend $400 for its upgraded version that included some wireless controllers and a 20GB hard drive. These prices made the console more affordable than its competitor. The extra money helps putting it towards some attachments or add-ons you may need for your 360, like the Wi-Fi adapter. Well, this was only needed if you owned one of the older editions. Yes, you heard me, the older editions of the 360s did have a few drawbacks compared to its slim version, like no Wi-Fi adapter or an extremely small storage. Or you may have needed the extra power adapter to play the Xbox Kinect. But not everything was bad about the older 360, because one thing the older 360 helped with was the changing of the internal memory. It was a simple slide and swap. Now going back to the perks of the 360, it introduced gamers to the fun side of party chats and achievements. The 360 did something that all other variants of the Xbox didn't do anymore: forced game chat. So say you were playing a game of Call of Duty Black Ops and decided to play a particular game mode like Search and Destroy. You can't use party chat anymore. You would have to communicate with your team to win the objective. They kinda stopped doing this in the later years of the Xbox, but I think they should do that again with all communication-based ranked games. Well, more as a separate lobby section. Now I also just mentioned Xbox introduced the gamer score, or also known as achievements. The addition added reasons for gamers to explore what a game had to offer, and it also gave benefits to players who like to play solo games. Now, you remember in the beginning how I said Xbox 360 had something super personalized that we don't have anymore? Well, I was talking about the avatar creation. Instead of just saying a basic profile photo from just some simple selection, you get a full 3D animated avatar that you can earn cosmetics for when playing your games. Then when others look at your profile, they can also see that in great detail. Continuing on, Xbox had backwards compatibility, so instead of buying a new copy of the game you just bought on last gen, you were able to just grab your old disc, throw it in, and boot it up. Lastly, the Xbox had the Kinect, and an amazing device that integrated a new type of gaming, and it was kind of also a trolling device. You used your body for new style of games, and also Xbox users used it to gain advantage in video games. Now we just got done talking about the best of the 360, but now we need to talk about what really broke of some of that 360 flair. First was you needed to pay for a subscription to play online. Compared to the PlayStation, the Xbox subscription was about $7 to $10 a month, or about $50 to $60 yearly just to play online. Just remember though, Game Pass wasn't the thing at the time, and this was all still new. But with this cost, I can say the experience that the 360 ran online was better than the connection to the PS3. And the only other bad thing about the 360 was the infamous Red Ring of Death, a phrase that scared a lot of Xbox owners, because it was believed that when it happens, your Xbox just becomes unusable. The amount of units was never confirmed, but it was estimated to be about 11 to 15 million consoles affected. Moving over to the competition, we have the Sony's PlayStation 3, a console that as of 2026 is still online and running. But we ain't talking about that. We're talking about the release years. November 17th, 2006, about 7 years after the release of the popular Sony's PS2. Sony had some big shoes to fill after the recent success of their previous console. But when they announced the next big console at E3 in 2005, there were some mixed opinions regarding the price. But do not worry, we will come back to that. Sony did, however, release some gems of a game that would later turn into a popular HBO show. So let's go down the list of games. First off, we have the main face of the PlayStation 3, Little Big Planet, a beloved puzzle platformer and a community creation of a game, where you run around as a simple sock boy while completing simple objectives. It was cute, it was fun, it was family friendly. Then moving on, we have a more action-based game where we got Uncharted, a critically acclaimed action-adventure series created by Naughty Dog, the same people who made Ratchet & Clank and Jak and Daxter. A cover-based shooter about a professional treasure hunter who solves historical mysteries. Then we got The Last of Us, another critically acclaimed game with many remasters and a whole TV show to support it. Last of Us is a game about a guy in an infected world smuggling a possible cure to the Firefly clan. And yes, I wanted to be as vague as possible. And now with the main games out the way, we need to boot ourselves over to what made the PlayStation 3 a great console. First, we got the simplicity of the home screen. With everything categorized to a simple left and right fashion, it made finding what you need in a breeze. Next, I had a Blu-ray player, which at the time was a must-have for many movie enjoyers. For context, Blu-ray was a higher audio and video quality rate. At the time, DVD displayed 480p, while Blu-ray did 1080p. That's a big jump. Then if you were a gamer, you had free online access, so no paying that monthly or yearly fee to play with your friends. But the drawbacks was you did have less features than the competitor. One of the last great things about the PlayStation 3 was the battery life for the controller. These controllers felt like they had weeks worth of battery life, compared to the Xbox where you're changing out the back of your battery every, say, day or so. Now let's move on to what was terrible about the PlayStation 3. First off is the most obvious to people who were around the launch. The initial launch price was crazy, starting at $500 USD for the 20GB and $600 USD for the 60GB model. This would be a $200 price hike than the Xbox's price. Second, we had the 2014 Lizard Squad hack. The hack that was on Christmas took PSN services down for 2 whole weeks while thousands of people's data got stolen. Next, you know how we have the Xbox's Red Ring of Death? Well, the PlayStation had something a little different. With the original fat PS3, we had an issue with the DVD players just going out on us. Finally, we have the PlayStation Move, a device that was supposed to compete with Xbox's Kinect, but more felt like an off-brand version of the Nintendo Wii. Now, that was all the info I compiled for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Did I miss anything important? Let me know in the comments below. But now we move on to the most important question. Who won that console war? Well, let's do some quick rehash. Starting off with the gaming aspects, Xbox had games that were more memorable and replayable than the PlayStation, with the added fact of Xbox having backwards compatibility for the generation of that console. Xbox also had a better live service experience with a party chat, but PlayStation didn't have to pay for the live service price. So Xbox is getting 2 points in the gaming while PlayStation gets 1. And no, I'm not adding the Kinect or PS Move since I don't really have enough knowledge on them to make that opinion. Then we got what did the console offer? Xbox? It was cheaper in the initial price. PlayStation didn't get the Red Ring of Death though. But the Xbox had some animated avatars, and they had easily changeable hard drives. So that's 3 more points for Xbox and 1 more for PlayStation. So the winner for this console war is with the Xbox 360. And before PlayStation 3 fans get on to me about saying that I'm biased to the Xbox 360, all I'm gonna tell you is this. I grew up with the PlayStation 3 and it is still my personal favorite console of choice. Now the first 2 sets of consoles during the Sony vs Xbox wars were pretty simple to choose from. But this next one took a little bit of time to figure out since they were both really great consoles. This is Sony's PS4 versus the Xbox One. I do want to quickly note that we are not going by sales, because this video would end in about 30 seconds. But to quickly itch that curiosity, it's PlayStation 4 with 117 million units sold, compared to Xbox with 58 million units sold. Now let's move on to the comparison. The time is November 22nd, 2013, and Xbox just got done winning the most recent console wars with its Xbox 360. And no, they did not win by sales, but they won by innovation with a really strong community of outspoken hardcore gamers. But now with the new generation starting, Xbox needed to try to keep the lead by doing something bold. But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the Xbox exclusive games that came out or continued for the system. The first game we are going into is about a journey throughout the sea, plundering and destroying other players' vessels while searching for gold chests. If you guessed the Sea of Thieves, you would be correct. Sea of Thieves is an online multiplayer game that was developed by Rare. Yes, the same Rareware that developed Conker's Bad Fur Day, I'll have a video of that in the description, Donkey Kong games, Banjo-Kazooie, and GoldenEye 007. Another game that was exclusive to the platform was State of Decay 2. An open world, resource management heavy, multiplayer zombie survival game. The game came out late into Xbox lifespan and had become so well loved that a third game is actually in the works. This game was developed by the folks at Undead Labs.
What would you do if the world you knew was gone?
Then the last game we will note is Forza Horizon 4, a highly beloved racing game that was exclusive to the Xbox. Well, until a year later when Forza Horizon 5 was released and it was now appearing on PlayStation platforms. And finally, Forza was developed by Playground Games, the same people who ended up helping make DJ Hero 2. Now, with some noticeable games out the way, let's dig into the specialty of the Xbox One's life and talk about the best things around this machine and what it had to offer. Now, compared to the previous versions of Xbox, they added many new things that made Xbox really stand out compared to the previous system. The one thing they did before PlayStation was genuine crossplay ability from console to PC. That was honestly the biggest W that got gaming into the right direction, with the help from the game Fortnite. Now, I understand that in technical terms, PlayStation did it about 23 years earlier with PS2's Final Fantasy XI, and then again in 2014 on the PS3 with Final Fantasy XIV. But we are talking about it being common for general games more than just MMOs, like Call of Duty, Siege, Rocket League, and other well-known multiplayer games that you probably play now with your friends cross-platform. But continuing on with Xbox One's success, we need to bring back up what really made them outshine the PS4. The fact is that they still had backwards compatibility, a main staple for all generations of gamers, a feature that Sony still didn't want to give except for when it comes to repurchasing ports and remasters, for example, like The Last of Us. Because why play games that you already own when you can just pay money again for the same game? Now, for the final and probably best darn thing that Xbox gave to its gamers was the Game Pass, a service that would expand a gamer's library by more than 100-fold. For just one good price of $10 a month, you would gain access from games from older generations all the way to the newer games at the time. I also want to note that Sony 2 years before did something like it called the PS Now, and it was originally just a streaming service for $20 a month with a very low selection of games. Now, with all the amazing things out the way about the Xbox One, you're probably wondering, what could have gone wrong? Well, a lot of this stemmed from its earlier launch times. First up, we had the price issue, an issue that originally backfired on Sony's PS3, but with Xbox, they kinda had a reason to give the extra $100 price hike. They bundled it with the second generation of its Kinect. And honestly, it was truly unnecessary to force that bundle though. Next is that it originally planned to force 24-hour online requirement, an issue that would have affected bad connection users. But what made this even worse was that even if you were a used disc user, you still needed to connect to the internet to use your physical media. But luckily, after a lot of backlash, they changed the policy to what it is now. This final issue is more targeted towards more of the competitive game users, and that the GPU and the RAM are a lot slower on the Xbox One compared to the PS4. With the PS4 using 8GB DDR5 and Xbox using 8GB DDR3, it was about maybe 50% slower or something like that. But if you didn't care for that slight speed difference, then this was no problem. Now moving over to a console that really learned its lesson from its previous generation. This would be Sony's PS4. November 15th, 2013, and Sony just released its newest console, the PlayStation 4, and you can say that it was an astonishing upgrade, taking notes from its previous victor and adding a few tweaks of its own. It became truly something great and came back from the grave to be an amazing competitor to the Sony vs Xbox console war. But before we talk about the features, you know we have to talk about at least 3 of the games that were exclusive to the PS4, obviously PC not being involved. First, we got the game that is still talked about in a certain community, a game that added a darker feel and a unique feeling to the genre that we know. Bloodborne, a 2015 action hardcore game that follows a traveler through Yharnam seeking a medical cure to only be trapped in a horror nightmare. This game was made by the well-known company FromSoft, a company known for making rage-inducing get-good games. Then we got a game that was well known back in the PS2 era, but with a significant upgrade to the point of it being in the talks again. That was the first-party action adventure game God of War, made by the Santa Monica Studios.
My son, we do not fight because the world makes us fight. We fight for a greater purpose.
Last week, we got a game that started its series on the PS4, also by Santa Monica Studios, and has been continued to the VR and a continuation on the PS5. And this game is called Horizon Zero Dawn. This would also be another action-adventure role-playing game where Aloy, an outcast huntress, explores a mechanized world, uncovers humanity's downfall, and discovers that she is a clone. Now, I want to quickly note two things. One, I understand that there were better games I could have chose out of the huge PS exclusive list. And second, Bloodborne was only mentioned because it was actually truly one of the very few that didn't come to PC, making it the genuine true PlayStation 4 exclusive. Now with that taken care of, let's actually talk about what Sony did truly to make this console better. First, it made more than 30 plus first party games for the console itself, with some still being talked about or being turned into some type of TV show. Then, it introduced gameplay recording on consoles with its built-in capture card and dedicated share button. You can now share your clips to YouTube or straight go to live streaming. Xbox would later add the feature as well, but not in the early stages. This feature would also be used with party chat, being added with a share screen or a play together option, so it kind of feels like a little bit of a couch co-op. Then, PlayStation tried its hands on its very first VR system, and to be honest, it wasn't that bad for the price in its very first attempt. I did own one, and it's what got me into Beat Saber. This helped introduce people to the new style of gaming while improving the next VR system. Finally, it added features that Xbox had from its previous console, like party chat and, sadly, paid subscriptions. But the PlayStation Network did get better for it. Now let's talk about some of the issues that I had with the PlayStation 4. First, there was no good version of the Xbox Game Pass that was worth the money, as I kind of slightly explained earlier, called PS Now. It was the only way to play older games from the list that they offered, and by only streaming. Added with that the streaming capability was just freaking horrible. Then they fought to open up the crossplay to other consoles and PC for about a year, while others got to connect in a brand new way. And lastly, when the PlayStation 4 got about 1 year old, it started to slowly sound like a jet taking off from your room. And over the years, it just got louder. Now, with that being said and done, we need to go back to the real question at hand. Who won the console war? Did Xbox continue the throne, or did PS4 take the seat? Well, honestly, it's more of a tie, and based on your own perspective. Yeah, Xbox may have had more games to play on the console by old discs or Game Pass, and crossplay earlier with PC, but PlayStation had more new and exclusive games that really made gamers talk, with the added fact of the sharing the game feed with others. And Sony did try something new here with their PSVR. So I'll say it like this. If you are a gamer that enjoys multiplayer or older games with a simple price of $120 a year, which is about the cost of 2 new games, then Xbox is your winner. But if you enjoy newer single-player games with a built-in recording software and screen sharing with your friends, then PS4 is your winner. Now we've come to today's generation, and it has been a trip so far, but let's quickly hit the main pointers while also remembering that the generation is still happening. Now at the moment, the PS5 is winning, but after their recent announcement of going 100% digital, while taking away about 551 bought movies, things could change last minute. But Xbox also did have some wrong steps in this generation. This is due to the fact that the Xbox is not really doing any exclusive games, plus they gave Halo, the main face of Xbox, to the PS5, and then messing up the Game Pass a little bit, and then they went through a very tough management change. But within these past months, Xbox has been slowly gaining ground on preparing to be the better console for the next generation. So let's go through some of those rumors. First off, Xbox might be offering a disk drive. Then, they're making Game Pass cheaper, but they are taking away a few games that made Game Pass, like Call of Duty Day 1. And then I think the next biggest thing is that there might be a possible link with PC gaming. Now, what did you think of the video? Did you enjoy it? Just make sure you like and subscribe and tell me what you think of the next generation.